So we always try to take care of our neighbors, take care of our friends, things like that. When they ask us to do things, we love to share that too. Because if we need somebody to come into our house, we
Especially watching pets.
yeah. And so one of our friends asked us to um, watch their house while we're gone, and they said that we could go in and grab some of the eggs that they have chickens. They said to have more than just chicken. I'm trying to remember. Um,
It was mainly the chickens that we could check on the chickens and we could take some eggs home with us.
So I thought this is great. I can go over and grab those and I can take care of the house, feed the cats, whatever it might be. And so I got took care of the cats and all that, but had to go out to the chicken house as they had. It wasn't a
Hen
huge one,
hen
hen house.
houses.
And I they had a gate at the end of it that you could open up and reach in and grab all the different stuff out of it. And I opened the gate, opened it, and staring straight at me was this, I guess it was a black, I don't know. I wanted to run at that point.
That's a big old black snake.
And I just slammed the door and closed the thing and ran from there because I hate snakes. That is just my worst fear. And it,
So we were watching them. I had been over by myself and you had said, I don't want to be around snakes. And when I had gone, there was no snakes. I'm like, there's no snakes, Don. There's no snakes. You can go over on your own and do this.
yeah,
And
so
you
much for
go
that idea, you
and you'd
know.
encountered the big blacks because they like to curl up where the chickens, right under the chickens as they lay the eggs, because then they get free eggs.
Yeah, but they probably got a lot that week that they were gone.
Because you
Uh,
wouldn't go back in the hen house after that.
anyway, hello, this is Don.
And this is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
And this is podcast number 221. And today we're talking about down on the farm. We got a few alternatives to what's out there as far as senior living going. Um,
We kind of went down a rabbit hole of down on the farm because we went to a friend's farm today.
and
But
it was a big
first,
farm.
but first,
Oh, but first we have our from our, I don't know if I
hold it.
caregiving 101, 101 ways to keep caregiving from making you crazy. And this one is one it says about can and will, which I I could have done the egg thing, but I couldn't do it. But you can do many things that are almost sure to help you lower your caregiver's stress level. But will you? If you read suggestions in this workbook and think, I could never do that, you are often confronted with an idea that you could do it if you tried, but your mind is telling you that you couldn't or shouldn't, so you won't. Many caregivers find that the responsibilities thrust on them by their caregiving duties, helping care for recipients with toiletry or other things, quickly dispel the thought that they can't do something. You can do what you will.
Oh, that's powerful. I could talk on that by itself, but we'll move
Yeah,
on.
we can go on. And of course, I've got some farmer jokes for you here. So let's see. What conversation does a farmer have with the cow while milking it?
What kind of conversation does a farmer have with the cow while milking it?
Thank you for repeating
I don't know, Don.
it.
What kind?
Utter nonsense. Let's see. Um, what should the farmer say to a cow when it's in his way?
Um,
You can probably guess this one.
I don't know. Get
Move.
Oh, I was thinking something about a pun on the word get out of my way. Whey is a protein in milk.
And lastly, how did the farmer find the cow?
He went looking for it.
He tractored down.
Oh,
Tractor.
tractored down.
Yeah.
But bump.
That was kind of dumb. But anyway,
So we
meanwhile, back at the farm.
we have this friend, this great friend from our homeschool community. I've known them forever. In fact, I went to a homeschool park day and she was the first person I met because our older two kids are very similar ages. And so ours were 2 and 6, so hers were like 1.5 and 5. But they used to live in a small little town, but they had some property and they had a garden there. And we even went there. She did a homeschool gardening, a raised garden bed on hay bales. And We went there one time, and she did have some chickens when she lived there. But it was what, maybe 2 acres of land or
Yeah.
something. So they, about the same time we moved out of Charlotte, came here, they moved to another town nearby, but bought a farm.
Big farm.
And it's my second time going. I finally went and I visited with her. It was great. We sat and talked and stuff. And so I took Dawn today because she does her own plants. She has a huge garden. It's, what did she say, 18 acres or something?
18 acres. Yeah.
Um, and so we went. I said, why don't you come with me? We'll have a ride together through the country.
Yeah.
And it's all back roads. It was about a 40-minute drive from our house to hers. We could have taken the highway, but it would have taken just as much time because you still
Yeah.
have to come back around. And what was your thought, Don? Because I had been there before, and
Well, it was huge. It was like I couldn't believe that that had that much space, you know. Um, I wouldn't think about that at our age of wanting to, you know,
Steph's
take
about
on
10 years
that
younger than me.
she's taken. Yeah. And it was a farm. There was a lot of she had pigs and
She
ducks
raises
and
coon
geese.
pigs, ducks. Yes, because there were little hatchlings, little ducks, whatever you call duck hatchlings. And I picked one up and I was talking to him, and you were asking, do you sell these? Do you? And she said, those we're going to eat. And I said, the ducks? She goes, yeah, eventually. I'm like, oh, my little baby ducks. I told her, I said, I could not do what you do. Like she has chickens for eggs, but then she also raises meat chickens and turkeys and stuff. I said, if I had to live in a time period where people had to do that for themselves, I don't know that I could. I'd be a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Um, I like to eat the meat, but I couldn't kill the animals. And
Well, what I did think about with it is, you know, what she's doing with the grandchildren and with the kids that are around it. They're really getting into it, and I think that's, you know, they're learning about the land, they're learning about raising stuff, all of that kind of stuff. I think, which is really brilliant, you know, especially nowadays. That learning that kind of stuff. We don't have people that are like we talked about. Farmers are kind of uh,
Well, yeah, so as we were coming back, we are talking about topics and things, and I started look up, is there a senior living community that's centered around a farm life? And what I discovered, and I had no idea, is there is a crisis in the US that American farmers are aging. I found out the average age is 57 to 58 years old, and a great percentage of them are 65 and older. And these people are getting, retirement age, and they're offspring are not taking over the farm. And so, there's a crisis around this, and I had no idea. I just kind of discovered this um, in searching for something else about seniors and farms. Um, and so it's something we could talk more about. We don't know a lot about that, but what I was looking for was communities that, you think of assisted living communities, you think of um,
facilities, different senior like um, even I think you talked about independent, but also the next level up. Like a,
55 plus
fit-
community.
well, I'm just talking about actually in facilities
Oh,
themselves,
assisted living. Yeah.
assisted
I
living.
was like, is there somewhere that has a little bit of incorporation, with some farm life or something? And in searching for something like that, I found Sage Senior Co-Housing Advocates. So this is sagecohoadvocates.org. We'll share the link because there's another Sage, and I'll mention it too. But this is an all volunteer organization that aims to help individuals and groups discover the benefits of co housing for those over 50, learn how to start a co housing community, find existing communities, and new projects underway. So, not necessarily a farm community, and yet I, I just found this fascinating that the people plan the community. So, unlike in independent living where you buy into it and you have paid people managing it, so it costs a lot of money. And when you need help, you pay for caregivers, that take care of you. The idea of this is I'll just read from the website. Co-housing is a planned residential community that combines private homes with shared indoor and outdoor spaces designed to support an active, independent, and interdependent community life. So instead of having someone else take care for you, they care for each other. It's a lifestyle choice where living in a close knit, intentional community improves health, reduces the need for senior services, fosters rewarding relationships, and makes life more affordable and fun. And like intergenerational co-housing, senior co-housing is a solution to today's social and environmental challenges. So I was not able to find specifics about costs, but you are sharing responsibilities, kind of like a commune, but living together. And there are seniors who age and are able to help other people. Not everybody, as they age, are going to need physical assist. People assume that all the time, but there are plenty of people who age well into their 90s, still in their own home, living independently. Even people that move to an independent living community, they often never have to leave independent living. Yes, there's assisted living that provides care. And so
Well, I think I started out by saying in the car, what do farmers do when when they get dementia, they have to go to,
that's right. We did start talking about that because I have worked with some clients who live out in the middle of nowhere and their family convinces them, you can't live on your own anymore. And they pick them up and they move them into a community. And even if it's not in a big city, it's a small building, maybe
yeah,
on a little bit of land,
they got a little room for
but they
themselves.
go
Yeah.
from being solo, independent, maybe they've got a pet with them, free to, even if they don't drive, they have the freedom to walk around the property, and it's a totally different life living in an apartment style living for them. And just that shock. Um, you know, a lot of people struggle with moving out of a personal home into a community with other support, but when you've lived on a farm your whole life,
It's got to
it
be,
just got me thinking about that and the challenge. Those people often want to live and die in their home, and if they can afford caregivers and things, but it is, we have to think about that. If we have aging loved ones who are used to living in a rural life, that's a big change, um, of life, moving into an apartment. Just think about it yourself, as a middle-aged or young adult. Um, have you lived in a rural location where even if you didn't have farm animals, you would stop by the local farm to get things. It was a long drive, but you had land to walk around on, maybe walk
um,
down to the creek, compared to living in an apartment, even, maybe in a city, but there are apartments in all kinds of areas. And just that contrast of what life can be
mm,
like. And as we get older, the change can be more challenging for people. So just kind of thinking about the challenges of that, and then just finding this community idea. Because in my mind, I was like, my dad was part of a Montessori style adult daycare. So adult daycare is where adults, usually with dementia or maybe some physical aging issues, go somewhere. They hang out for the day for several hours. Their caregivers can then go off and do other things, right? And the Montessori based one my dad was part of, they have it's like a community, and there's like a, they participate in it. Even though my dad wasn't making all the decisions, he felt like he was on the board and he was part of it, and he could choose what he did, and he wasn't forced to do activities and things. And they did have a little pond. In fact, my mom just told me they moved to another location, and I'm imagining, a place like that, if you have some land, you can go out and go fishing. They did have a garden off the deck and that kind of thing. So I was thinking about kind of that idea, but where people live and not just, a daycare kind of place. So I was wondering, and I'm start researching, and I'm just, as we're driving on the 40 miles on the country road, um, and so I found these other things in my searching for that, and I still don't know if something like that exists, but I'll still be on the search for it. And we're planning to reach out to this Sage Senior Co-housing Advocates, to see if we can interview somebody about this, because it's just I find it fascinating, you know, um, being a part of a community. I see the affordability of it, because I know, Don, we're not going to be able to buy into one of these communities. Um, it's pretty much like buying a really expensive house, and on top of that, you still have a high
yeah.
monthly payment, like 4,000 or more. Um,
Well, in my mind's going, I've got a couple more than a couple cousins that farm, and they're my age. So I've
in
often
their mid 60s and
I may
older.
I may talk to them because it might be interesting to see what their plans are, what their thoughts
They
are.
still farm, some of your
Well,
cousins?
that's what I'm not positive, but I saw them just a couple months ago when I went up there, and I saw Chuck, he's same age as I am, I'd never asked him if he's retired or not, so I'd have to
Yeah,
kind of find out.
Don's from St. Louis, but his grandparents lived in more rural areas of Missouri.
Well, both of them
On
were
both
in
sides of the
farms
family
too.
were farms. Weren't they both dairy farmers, in fact?
Well, no, my grandfather Grodoff was dairy farmer, but on my
The Gentian
Genneman
side.
side, it was just a farm that they didn't have dairy. But and the tough part is that my grandfather died pretty early, so my grandmother had to do a lot of the stuff. I'd like to find out more about that too, because I'm sure she raised chickens and had cows and stuff like that that she had to take care of. But anyway,
You talk about how you were the city cousins because you
oh
grew
yeah,
up in the city, like, well, St. Louis County, but you're very much a city compared to
yeah,
them all growing up on the farms. It wasn't even, it's what, not even an hour outside of St. Louis, but it's
yeah.
still,
Well, my grandmother's farm is gone already. It's a post office now. But yeah, I used to hate going. We go out there and her when I first was really young, she had an outhouse. It wasn't in the house. You had to go out. And oh my God, I
so
think
this would have been in the
I'd
60s, right? Don was born in
I would have
1958.
rather hold it than go out in
For
the
you, yeah, you were not used to that, whereas your cousins
yeah.
grew up with that. And I know your brothers are older than you and your sister. And they used to go and spend time on the farm, I think,
Yeah,
more than
they go
you
out there for
did
like
because you were so
the whole
much
summer, I
younger.
think.
And I don't know if they enjoyed it a lot more than you did. You're definitely the city kid. And what was it into all that?
They've always said they've enjoyed it. But my grandfather on the Grotto side was, well, like I said, that's the only one they went on was Grotto side, and he was quite the stern German, and they didn't go out there just to play around. They
Oh,
had time, but
worked.
they had to work while they were out there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're kind of going off idea here, I guess, but
No,
it's
we're
all about
talking all
farm,
things farming. And yeah, and it just gets you thinking about growing up differently and what's enjoyable to you and what's because I told you to wear shoes you don't mind getting dirty today, and you're like, why? And I'm
Well,
like, it's it's
I
a
didn't think it was,
it's a farm,
yeah,
Don. You're like, yeah, yeah.
and
You're
it
like,
was
we
literally a
pulled up.
farm
You're
too.
like, is this all there's? I'm like, yeah, they bought a farm. They didn't just buy land and say we have a farm. They bought a farm. In fact, there
It
was a
was,
grain mill on the property, and she
yeah.
bought it. They took the grain mill part out, and she turned it into a building. On the inside, like the first time I went, she walked me all over. So it was my second time going there with Dawn, and she said she was going to be back in the granary building. And I didn't realize how run down it looks from the outside because they've totally remodeled it on the inside. She's doesn't have a working bathroom yet, but it's all fixed. It looks beautiful on the inside, right? I mean, it's got
Well,
which, well, it's got the walls. It looks like, a little
yeah,
house.
yeah.
It's got rooms in it. Yeah, it was messy because there were kids' toys there, and but I mean, the inside did not
Yeah.
match the outside.
No,
Um,
no.
and she's done a lot, put a lot into this. She said the decking was falling apart,
Yeah.
and she's turning it into an area. She watches her grandkids sometimes. They can come play. In fact, her oldest child lives there with the grandkids, and she's got tables where she does her seedlings for plants she grows. And 'cause when I went to visit her last time, she's like, "Oh, don't go buy plants. I'll have a bunch to give you." And right now, it's a very big chicken egg hatching season, and later on in the year, she'll charge a little bit for the eggs because of just helps cover cost of things. But she has so many right now. She's like, no, I'm not charging you. I'm just giving them away right now. And there's nothing like farm fresh eggs if you haven't had them. Um, but yeah, so she's created this whole space there, and she's raising pigs and selling them. And there were like two pigs when she bought the farm, I think, and she came with, I guess, some of the chickens. She had chickens at the house before, but now she's just got a lot. You walk around, there's ducks, there's chickens, there's cats, there's in fact she was something she had hatched baby chickens. Um she
And
used
the
an
rats.
incubator and then she put them out in the pen, and she discovered they were all gone, and we talked about that it was not a snake because a snake would have swallowed them whole, but she thinks it was rats who got into and to eat all the baby chickens. Um There's a cat in my lap. But so yeah, it's kind of a fun experience. And
I mean, when I was probably 10, 11 years old, we went out. and we saw the farm, my grandpa Groto's farm with the milk. And it was interesting to see because, they
Was he
had,
still, how did you meet your
no,
grandpa Grotov?
I met him when
Real
I
young.
was,
So your
because
brothers
he
remember
died
him,
in
but
64.
oh, okay.
So
You were
I was
just
5 or 6 at the time, but we went out there. Grandma died like 8 years later. We might have gone out before she gone away, but she was living with my one of my aunts at the time. But we were able to meet the farmer that bought the place, and he allowed us to walk around on it. It was really cool because I the one that really got me was they called it the well house, and that's where they cooled the milk down after they milked all the cows. They would bring it in, and it was so wild to see because literally through the center of the well was a water like a lake or a stream going by, and they would pump out of that, and it would run up into the wall through these pipes up to the top of the wall, and then they would run the water, they'd run the milk through the pipes, I should say, and they run the water over the pipes
to keep
to
it
cool
cool.
it down as it goes through these series of pipes, and then they would milk, bottle it up and milk it. So it was kind of cool to see all of that. Even at I was very young at the time, but it was still really cool to.
I remember you telling me you were grossed out by the fresh cow's milk.
Well, that was yeah, that was going to. Like I said, my two of my other uncles were farmers too, and we went there for I think for lunch or something one time, and oh, it was just like I said, I was a city boy, and they had fresh milk that was warm, and on the top it was
Cream.
the cream on it, and everybody was like, their kids were all drinking it, and I'm like, yeah,
It's
and
probably really, really good.
they made their own
It's,
hot dogs and that kind of thing,
oh,
and it was just it was not a fun meal
you
for me.
wanted your packaged food from the that looked like it came out of the
It's
grocery
like
store
now,
and
yeah, like you say, now it sounds like it would be really good, but
special, but
I was the city boy,
because you had a milkman growing up, right, that delivered
Oh
milk
yeah,
to your door,
every
in the
once a week,
60s.
I think, or
And
twice a week.
did that probably end in the 70s, like by the time you were in
Yeah,
high
yeah,
school?
you
Okay.
know, you
I
had the milkman, you you didn't have Walmarts, or you had a five and dime kind of, but you had a person that would come to your door for different things you might, cleaners and things like that. And like tell the story that and I probably told you this one before, but we had he
Fuller
was
Brush Man.
Fuller, but yeah, thank you, Fuller Brush Man, and they would come about I think about every 2 months or something like that, but he came and he was missing an arm. So he did everything. He was really talented because he had all these bottles, and he would take it
Cleaning
and he'd
supplies and
flip it up and
things.
grab it back and show you, and he'd flip it back and put it back, and he'd flip another. And I
You were
stood behind, I
fascinated.
was behind my mom holding on to
Probably
her
four or
skirt,
five.
looking at her, and he leaned down one day. He says, "Never put your arm out the window
Didn't
when
you
you're driving."
didn't you ask him how he lost his arm?
I don't know if I did. I might have said something to my mom. I might have, but I just remember that him leaning down and go, "Don't put your arm out the window." So for the longest time, I wouldn't put my arm out the window
And who
in the
knows if
car.
that's really how he lost his arm or not.
No, I don't think it was. I'm trying to remember if somebody told me that later or something, but
It's just amazing how much life changed. And I mean, different parts of the country were different. You were in St. Louis, not technically the city, but they call it the county.
we were in
Uh,
the county part of it. Yeah.
and I grew up in New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and I was born in 69, so much more the 70s. But even my mom, who grew up in New York City and New Jersey, I guess they might have had a milkman at some point, but I don't know if stores and shops came to the East Coast before they came to the Midwest. It's
I don't
actually an
know.
interesting question to pursue.
Because we also had a bread man. And that was because I could always try to convince mom that you need to get some cookies from him too. That was it, because you didn't have places to go. Well, we had bakeries a little bit later, but we didn't have any places to really go to get those kind of things. But yeah.
It's a whole nother topic to explore and discover. So we're looking forward to doing another podcast and really discovering more about this SAGE organization of community living, the interdependence. I really like that because
Mhm.
they can help each other out. In fact, at the independent living community I work at, it's a rental place. So there are places you can buy into, you like putting money down in a house and pay rent. This place just you have a monthly payment and it's more affordable than assisted living. So a lot of people really could benefit from assisted living where there's more caregivers and things, but they can't. And independent living, an, a standalone independent living community is not a healthcare community. It is basically a senior apartment. Most of them have um, meal service. So some of them are a la carte. You pay so much a month. You get 2, 3 meals a day. There's activities that go on. There's different outings that happen. There's a maintenance them. There's housekeeping. There's basic services they can do for you. You can pay extra for things. We operate our therapy company out of the building. There's a caregiver agency that actually works out of the building, which is kind of a really neat thing because usually you have to pay for an hour or 4 hours a day. But because they work out of the building, people can get caregiver services. But again, that's separate from the building. And people don't realize, we don't just have access to people's medical records. And if someone goes out, well, nobody might know because you don't have to sign in and out. You're living in an independent apartment. It's not a medical community. And that's one thing that's so different from assisted living that people don't realize the big difference there. Or a continuous care community. Like my mom lives in independent living, but it's a community that has independent living, assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing. So because of that, it has higher levels of people and different things in place because of that medical component that is involved in it, even though she's in the independent living part. But thinking about the costs and paying for things. So when I'm reading about these community senior housing, they run it. They run the community. It's not, you don't have other managers coming in. Everybody's got houses, but you have shared living spaces as well. And I'm just very curious about it because it appeals to me as I think about, as we get older, Don being 11 years older than me. I mean, my coworkers who are like not quite 60 in the early 60s were talking about when they were going to be retiring. And I just looked at them and said, I don't know if I'm ever retiring.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right now, I'm not in, a financial place. I've got a kid about to go to college. Um, but really thinking about our future, right? We've talked about this a lot with different people, but knowing there are different options out there. And something like this might be a whole lot more affordable because you don't have to, you can stay active, you can be involved. Oh, what I was starting to tell when I was talking about my community where I work, um, some people get bored. The family convinces them they need a little more support, a little more care, that all the meals are provided. They have little kitchenettes in the apartments, but not a whole lot of space to really cook. So very few people actually do much cooking at all. And but sometimes they get bored and they want to feel useful and
Mm.
they need a job, they need a purpose, and they want something to do. And so it's like, reading about this, it's like this is perfect because people can help each other out in different ways. And so it's something I'm going to dig more into.
Yeah, I think we can find out a little more because we
Get
need to
someone
think
to.
nowadays, especially, we need to think about what alternatives are because, like I say, a lot of people, we're not the only ones that, it's tough to think about that kind of payment in the future. And so finding out different
There are,
alternatives and
yeah,
way
and
of doing
knowing
it.
there's different things out there and different, like they talked about intergenerational housing, that always appeals to me because I worked at a assisted living community and their memory care was a separate building. And in between the two assisted living and memory care buildings was a daycare. And I don't know if the daycare had been there first and the other buildings but I got to walk from one to the other. I worked in both buildings and I got to walk around the daycare and the kids would be out playing. And I just love that. I loved when the
Yeah.
weather was nice, that it was walkable, wasn't very far a distance. And when the kids were little, we would visit assisted living community once a month and did activities with the seniors. And I just see the benefit of that I've worked with seniors forever and just, your grandparents might live far away and just being able to, there are many seniors that really enjoy seeing children and maybe they don't have families nearby. Some seniors never had children for different reasons. There are seniors who don't want anything to do with children, but um, but just we learn so much from each other, different ages and things. Kids get grouped together in regular school system by their age and things, but think about it as we're adults, whether we're working environment. I worked with somebody. Um, who did I meet? I said something about I graduated in 92 and she looked at me and went, "Well, I was born in 1991." you know. So we work with people, who are older than us, younger than us. As you're an adult, you have friends who could be 10, 20 more years younger than you. Um, and our life is not really segregated by age the way it can be. Even these senior communities are often 55 plus. Some might be, 57, 50, 60, but there are people there up to the age of 100. Most places have usually someone who's either 99, 100, and I think our oldest is 104. So you think about the difference between a 65-year-old and someone
Yeah.
who's 104, there's almost three generations in there. And it's just interesting to think about that. There's a young man who moved in who's in his early 60s, and he's annoyed that his family moved him there. He's like, I can't live here with all these old people. But then he's talking about the managers. One's in his 80s and how active he is. And I'm like, yeah, does age really matter? You feel like you're surrounded by old people, but um,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it from a different perspective.
I
So what?
mean, we'll explore more of this and try to come up because I think it's a good topic to get into more of because, like I
Yeah,
said,
it was kind of a fun little rabbit hole to go down, all because we went to visit our friend's farm. But in my searching for these resources, I want to mention the other sage that is out there. If you Google sage, so there is Sage Advocacy and Services for LGBTQ elders. So I
wow,
learned it's local senior living communities celebrate inclusive living. I learned about this the first place I worked in Charlotte at a not first place I worked, but a continuous care retirement community. They went through training for this, and I found out what it was because I wasn't a full-time employee. I didn't have to do the training, but it was like I wanted to. So they advocate and they talk about, seniors that are lesbian, gay, whatever, thinking about people 60 plus who grew up like that. They grew up in a time when it wasn't safe to
yeah,
come out and be gay. And so their idea, they don't feel safe going to doctors sometimes and just the very different in lifestyle that they have compared to younger people. It's more acceptable, going to someone um, and so they educate people on those challenges and looking at different challenges and helping educate other people in the community. I know where my mom lives is a SAGE approved, certified that you can become kind of a certification if so many percentage of your employees that work there get training in this. And it's just a fascinating topic, and we'll have to do a whole podcast on it. But I just wanted to, as we're talking about alternative living in senior communities, especially because I found that there were two SAGE organizations when it comes to senior living, and they are SAGE USA.org. So that's different than the other SAGE. That's about community living, but also something really powerful and important that we could go into more. So we're going to reach out to those people in these different services.
yeah,
If you know somebody related to any of these topics we've covered today, from
yeah.
farm and assisted living that's on a farm versus community living versus the SAGE organization, either of them, reach out to us. We are going to connect with them ourselves as well to be on the lookout for upcoming podcasts to go into more depth with these different topics. Is there anything else, Don, that we wanted to talk about today?
No, I think they've got it covered.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you for joining us at Focused Healthy Family. If today's conversation helped you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with someone you might think would benefit from it. If stress, panic, or overwhelm are becoming part of your daily routine, consider exploring Don's EFT Tapping Discovery Series. EFT tapping can be described as weird, but then people realize, wow, this really works. So you might be skeptical, but learning about it can be helpful. For wellness tips, caregiving resources, and more episodes, visit focusedhealthyfamily.com or focusedhealthyfamilypodcast.com. You can connect with us on social media, Facebook, Focused Healthy Family. On Instagram, we are Focused Healthy Family 1. And again, if you're listening to this where you listen to podcasts, we also have a YouTube channel at Focused Healthy Family where you can watch and or listen to us. We air a new episode every Thursday. Please check out, we've been doing this for over 3 years, Don,
Yep.
to check out other podcasts and other topics we've covered. Know that Don is available to speak to organizations, caregiver groups, healthcare teams, and community groups about practical ways to reduce stress and build resilience in caregiving environments. For information about booking Don to speak at your location, please reach out to schedule a presentation or a workshop. And remember, how you speak to your children and your loved ones today shapes their future and yours.